Welcome into another episode of the Fat Guy Podcast. I'm the Fat Guy. Most people that I know just call me Brett. Thank you so much for listening today, hanging out today. Appreciate it. Got to say a quick hello to the patrons who support the podcast over on Patreon. Hannah DeMello, Eric Barnhart, Cindy Carr, Bessie Williams, Kenneth Wilkerson, Bobby Houston. Those guys make it so that we can help pay for the hosting, which is not just hosting, also time involved, a little bit of hardware involved, endless hours of research, and just as a way to say thanks, they chunk me a few bucks every month. And in exchange for that, they move to the head of the line if they have questions about fasting or keto or carnivore or any of that stuff. They also get patron-only podcast. As a matter of fact, I just did an extremely detailed podcast for my patrons only about fasting, where I covered pretty much anything you could ever want to know about fasting. And that was only for my patrons, so that was a little perk for them. They also get the podcast a few days before anybody else, and they also get it without all this stuff in it. No fluff, no ads. There's no ad at the beginning, no ad at the end, no ad in the middle. So if ads really drive you crazy, like the guy who emailed me last week and said that he loved my content, but my ads drove him crazy, well, you know... I mean, what can I say? I'm not charging people to help them. And so if you're interested in becoming a patron, it would mean the world to me, and it helps make sure that I can keep the free podcast free. And I don't ever have to charge anybody for advice or help or wisdom or knowledge or anything that I share. You can, the easiest way to get there is I have a custom URL, losewithmason.com, LOSEWITHMASON.com, losewithmason.com. So welcome into another episode of the podcast. Thanks so much for listening. Follow us on social media if you haven't already. Of course, Fat Guy Podcast is the username across all the social medias. And share. One of the most important things you can do is share. Just share. The way I got turned on originally to keto, which totally turned my whole knowledge base, mindset, frame of reference, set me down this journey of exploration, everything was because somebody shared something on Facebook and I read it, and otherwise I would have never found it. So that's the best thing you can do is share. Another great thing you can do is to go to Apple Podcast and rate us. A 5-star rating and a short comment about why you like the podcast or how we've helped you in some way. You don't know how much that boosts us. As far as Apple, because Apple has an algorithm that lets people, if somebody searches for lose weight or keto or fasting, Apple determines what they show them, and so a lot of that is based on ratings. So you not only be helping me, you'd be helping people find good content if you think this content is good. So we're going to be jumping into my mid-month. We're about a day late at the time of recording this on my mid-month update on my goal to lose 150 pounds this year. I intend to do that primarily with intermittent fasting. My original goal at the beginning of the year was to implement primarily 36-hour fasts, maybe fall back, and that's also known as an alternate day fast, maybe fall back on some 24-hour fasts when the need arose, and then as time or conditions warrant, maybe do extended fasts, which would be 48 or 72 hours, or maybe even 96 hours. So we'll update you on that, and then we're going to talk about binging. We're going to talk about binging and how you get off the binge train, because it happens to all of us, and it just happened to me. I'm human. Unlike some people that I have followed on social media that talk about fasting or keto, that hide when they binge and they pretend like it didn't happen, but you can see it happened. I don't want to down anybody, because that's not what we're about. We're all human and we all are frail in our own ways. But this person hid it a long time. And somebody called him out and was like, hey, all the pictures you're posting, it seems like they're old. Like you had posted them, months and months and months ago. Anyway, it eventually came out that this person gained some weight and they'd fallen off the keto wagon, and they tried to hide it. And I understand that, because I struggled with this when I first fell off the wagon. I lost 125 pounds. My mom died. It was a long battle with cancer. It was very traumatic. And I struggled with how to share my story with people who put so much confidence in me and said that I inspired them and helped them and educated them and motivated them and gave them tips, because you feel like you've let the entire world down. But ultimately, I fell back on what I've always fell back on throughout my life, and that's to just be honest about it, And I did, and it just worked out okay. And you're going to find a lot of that in this episode. So we're 16 days into the year. 16 days into the year, we've lost 12 pounds, and most of that we lost the first 7 days. So I haven't made a ton of progress since the first 7 days, but we haven't lost a ton of progress either, which is also good, and also points to the power of intermittent fasting, because you really can knock some weight off when you just stop eating. It's amazing what a simple concept that is, but how it's like, it seems like through all my life that was never talked about. If you ever heard the word fasting, it was equated with starving. And you'd hear things like, what is that phrase? Starvation mode. You're going to go into starvation mode. like somebody who's really fat and they finally decide to stop eating and somebody tells them they're going to starve. It's so ridiculous. If you're fat and you stop eating, you're not going to starve. Your body is designed. That's the reason you're carrying fat. Because we are biologically designed, whether you subscribe to the creator principle or you subscribe to the evolution principle. It doesn't matter which one of those you subscribe to. The fact remains, our bodies were designed. They have evolved. We've arrived at this point in time in human history to carry extra energy in the form of fat for times when we are not able to eat food, that our body can thrive. It can go back on fat stores and thrive. There's no starving if you're carrying 100,000 calories of fat. You're not going to starve. Eventually you will. Months and months and months later, if this is interesting. And I forget which doctor. God, I follow several doctors, and I don't mean quacks. I mean actual doctors. Dr. Robert Lustig is one of them. He's brilliant, and he may have been the one that gave this factoid. But even a lean person, a person that you look at that looks lean, like, I don't mean ripped and 6% body fat. I mean like a normal lean person where you're like, oh, they got a good body. Even that person is carrying up to 3 months of fat stores under their skin, subcutaneously, viscerally, wherever. And that's a person that doesn't even look fat. So if you look fat, you're going to be okay. All right? So, enough of all that. On to my trials and tribulations. So as you may or may not know, I'm retired, but I try to supplement my retirement income with poker. I used to play poker for a living back in 2005 and 2006. That's when you could play poker online. It was very convenient. I played poker online at my house, in my recliner, and I grinded out a pretty good living. Then what's known in the online poker world as Black Friday came, when George Bush decided to attach a no online poker bill to a Homeland Security bill for whatever reason, as if people playing poker online is some threat to the security of the nation. And online poker went away. So now I play live, and it is a great challenge to me because I'm a food addict. And I remember one of the first, even before I had revelations about, this whole hormonal cause of obesity, before I knew any of that and understood anything about insulin and leptin and ghrelin and all these things I understand now, I did acknowledge I was a food addict. I am addicted to food. I didn't know why I was addicted to food, but I knew I was addicted to food. And so, I've mentioned my best friend who lives out in California and is my diet, fasting, keto, whatever buddy. And we motivate each other. She probably motivates me more than I motivate her, but nevertheless, we're there for each other. But she, while she is amazing at doing all these goals and everything to achieve, the health and body and all that stuff that she's looking for, she'll admit that she's not a food addict. She's not addicted to food, and she understands that I am, and can see it. It's different. Um, and so one of the challenges I find is when I'm in the casino, no matter where I go, and I go play poker in Biloxi and Tampa and Daytona and Jacksonville and um, Ebro and Cherokee, and I've played poker all over the country. Um, there's just so much food there, and you're just sitting there at a table, and the people are all around you are ordering food and all this amazing food. Sometimes it's crappy food, which helps, makes it a little easier, but usually some amazing food will come by as well. And it's just really hard for a food addict to sit there and not order food. And I've had trips to the poker room where I was very successful and left after 2 or 3 days of playing poker and felt so proud of myself. And then I've had days where I left and I had held up really well the first day, started breaking down a little bit the second day, and while I didn't completely binge out, I did eat a few carbs. And then the third day, I just completely lost it, and I would consider those trips a partial victory. Like I partially survived, and if I can get into a 24-hour fast here, I can get right back on track and not too much harm done. And then you'll have times that were like this past week where I went, and right from the very first day I was there, I think I don't know why, but I just immediately ordered some chicken fingers and fries. And my original idea was, because you pay for the fries. The crazy thing about it is you pay for the fries whether you order them or not. Like, you can't say just bring me chicken fingers. They're going to bring you fries or chips, neither of which are good. And so it was fine. I'll order them. There's a few carbs in the chicken fingers, but it's a lot of meat, and it's not too bad, and it's a reasonable option, and I can stay on track and do fine as long as I continue maybe at least hitting 24s during my time here. 24s, I mean 24-hour fast, maybe 22 to 24-hour fasts in between, when I eat. I'll be fine. But dang it, they came, and the fries were there. And the next thing you know, food addict Brett took over, and I ate all the fries. And then once you get some carbs in your system, the cravings come. Once you introduce a fair amount of carbs, and fries is the worst. Fries are just empty carbs. Like, it's worse than if you bought a potato. And I'm by no means, if you're trying to watch your carbohydrates, I'm by no means saying you should buy a potato and bring it home and cut it up and make your own fries. But you're far better off if you do, because you're actually getting some whole potato there with at least some fiber and protein in it. These fries that you get at McDonald's or fast food places or at poker rooms or whatever, they're these puffed up airy things that have basically nothing in them but air and carbohydrates. They're just the worst. And then on top of that, they're fried in horrible oils. And boy, it was on from that moment on. Next thing you know, a couple hours later, I'm ordering something different, and then I wound up getting to this long session because I planned on leaving at midnight, but the table I was at was really good, and I was making good money. And next thing you know, I'm there at 2, 3 in the morning, and I've ordered again. Then finally I leave, and then the next day I wake up, and the hangry hits me. And if you've ever experienced hangry is caused by carb withdrawal. You have eaten carbs, and your blood sugar has skyrocketed, and then your body's desperate attempt to get it under control, it continues to pump insulin until it overpumps, and then you have a sugar crash, and then the hangry comes, and the hangry is hard to deal with. And I had that the second day, and so I didn't make it anywhere near 24 hours. I think I wound up making it like 13 hours before I was back ordering again, and I just went to the poker room to start playing to order the food there. And so again, I had good intentions. I was going to order the burger and get double the beef and just not eat the bun. Again, you get charged for the fries whether they bring them out or not. So on the one hand, I did start out with only the bottom bun, the thin bun. I'm like, I'll just eat the thin bun, and we'll work our way to getting back on track. And then the next thing you know, I'm into the fries, and it was just bad. And then, I think at like midnight that night, I was eating a apple pie a la mode, eating apple pie with ice cream on it, and I'm just off the rails at that point, completely off the rails. So I tell you all that to confess my sins and let you know that we're all human, and to let you know that there is an answer. It requires some discipline, but you can do it. And the answer is fasting. Now, I have to cough, so forgive me for that. I'm also getting over a cold. I'll try to edit that out, but I'm not sure if I'll be able to find it. The editor I have on my device is so cranky. So if I'm not able to edit that out, I apologize. But the answer is fasting. And you got to fast long enough that you completely deplete the glycogen stores in your muscles, organs, and liver. And the liver will be the first to go, or the liver's the last to go. So you'll deplete the glycogen stores, which is how your body stores sugar. The glycogen stores, you'll deplete them slowly throughout your muscles and other areas of your body, muscles, and then the liver is the last. Then you'll deplete that. And once you fast long enough to deplete that, the cravings and the hangry and all that stuff will go away, and you'll be able to get some idea of how to get back on track. Now, how long does that take? Well, it depends on the person. I shot for 24 hours, and at the end of 24 hours, I was still craving food like nobody's business, and I was weak. I was so weak, mentally weak. So instead of pushing to 36 hours, I said, okay, I'm going to eat. I've only fasted 24 hours. I'm going to eat, but I'm going to make sure that it's low-carb keto. And so it was. So I had bacon and eggs, and I ate plenty of them, but it was bacon and eggs, which is essentially basically no carbs, and lots of fat, which is satiating. And then I went right back into another fast. And then that time I was able to fast 27 hours, I think. And I felt pretty good at the end of 27 hours, but I was hungry, but I wasn't hangry. Wasn't craving carbs and stuff. So I ate a good no low-carb meal of sorts, and then jumped right back into another 24-hour fast. And we're back on track again. And so now I'm on my way, as of the time I'm recording this now, I'm on my way to a 36-hour fast, which I should hit in, I guess, about 8 hours from now. The problem is, 8 hours from now, I'm going to be heading back to the poker room. And I'm going to tell you, your health and weight loss journey is a puzzle that you can get a lot of help and knowledge and inspiration and motivation from other people. But your exact specifics is something you'll have to crack for yourself. And since I have to play poker, like, I don't want to get a job. I don't want to go work again for somebody. I enjoy poker. I'm good at poker. It allows me to travel and supplement my retirement income. And I can travel all over the country. And I enjoy it. And so my challenge this year, I mean, it's been my challenge every year for the past year and a half, really. My challenge is learning how to conquer poker room food. And I was going to skip poker this weekend and knock out some 36-hour fasts, or maybe even a 48-hour fast in there, and continue to nail the nutrition and the intermittent fasting all the way to next weekend, and then go back to poker. And I'm like, no, you're just never going to win doing that. You're never going to win. You have to keep going into the belly of the beast, and you have to figure out how to beat it. If I'm going to play poker, I have to go in there, and I have to have a plan. I have to try my best to stick to the plan. If the plan doesn't work, I have to alter the plan. I can't give up. I have to beat that. I don't have another choice. And that's not unique to me. My friend that I was talking about earlier, where she works, they often have days where people pile in the donuts, or they pile in the eclairs, or they bring in all this stuff, and she'll message me like, I'm fasting. I'm on a 24-hour fast, and I'm 20 hours in, and these jerks have brought in donuts and blah blah, and it's just killing her. She generally survives it though, whereas I probably wouldn't. And so we all have a dragon to slay. And I don't know what your dragon may be. And the point of this podcast isn't to tell you specifically how to slay your dragon that is your biggest nemesis, but it is to tell you how to get over it. And fasting is definitely the way to get over it. You have to get those glycogen stores depleted. You got to get that stored sugar in the form of glycogen in your muscles and organs and liver primarily back down to zero or as near zero as it'll get in homeostasis to get all that stuff under control. So that's always step one for me. Always step one for me is when I go off the deep end, I have to center myself and get into a place where I can jump back into a fast. And it may be, I may not hit like many times I've come back and I couldn't even make it 24 hours. I could just make it like 15. And that's where it's good to have a motivational partner, because my friend that I've talked about several times in this podcast, I'll be like, crap, I've only made it 15 hours, but I'm insane. I've got to eat something. It's going to be keto. It's going to be low carb, but I've got to eat. I didn't make it 24 hours. And she'll be like, that's great. That's awesome. You made it 15 hours. Do you know how many people don't ever go 15 hours without food? You've done something few people in America ever do. Congratulate yourself. Eat your food that you need to eat. Keep it low carb and get back on track, and then shoot for 24. And that's what I'll do. And I can't tell you how many times I've done that. I'll just fail at the 24. I'll only make it 15, or I'll only make it 16. But I'll stay committed to when I do eat and make sure I eat the keto. Then I'll jump back into another fast and I'll shoot for a 24 or whatever. And I may make it to 24 that time, or I may not. I may only make it to 18, or I may only make it to 20. And I'll be like, okay, that's progress. We'll take it. We're going to eat only keto food. We're going to keep it low carb. And we're going to eat a meal, and then we're going to jump right back into fasting. And that's the other key is when you do eat, you just got to eat one meal and you got to jump right back in. And I think that's more important than you may realize. Eat one meal. Make it a good meal. Make it a meal that's filling. Make sure it's keto. Eat no more than 10 to 12 carbs or something, maybe 15 in a good hearty keto meal. And then jump right back into fasting and try to go 20 hours this time, or 24, or at least 16 or 18 or something. And I think that's the key. I hope that this podcast has helped you in some way. Share it, rate us, and if you'd like to consider becoming a patron, that would mean the world to me. You chunk me a few bucks and I'll chuck you some perks your way. You don't have to put up with commercials. You don't have to put up with extra fluff. And you get the podcast a few days earlier, and you go to the front of the line if you have questions, and I'll try to help you in any way I can. That's at losewithmason.com. And then our social media is Fat Guy Podcast. And finally, if you haven't subscribed to the podcast, now if you're a patron, when you sign up for a patron, when you first sign up, you will get an email that will give you an RSS feed for the audio. You're going to copy that RSS feed, that link, and you're going to paste it into your podcasting app, whatever app you use. Like if you're an iOS user, you're going to use the Apple podcasting app. If you're a Google podcasting user, there's several different podcasting apps for Android users. I don't know what they are because I'm not an Android person. But you can find one and you paste that URL in there, and you'll get that patron only podcast right there on your phone, just like a normal feed from that you've been getting from the one that you found normally here. So thank you so much. We'll talk to you next time. Hang in there. Remember, intermittent fasting, going without food. And when you do eat food, low on the carbohydrates. You'll get to your goals. We're going to hit it. I'm going to hit 150 pounds this year, and you're going to hit your goals. We're going to do it together.